by way of a brief introduction here, a lot of people ask me about the origin of right chord leadership, the name right chord leadership, and as Lynette said, I am a professional musician and have been for about 25 years, in addition to my role as a consultant, a facilitator, a speaker, and a professor. I've actually taught at Salle University in the past. This fall I'll be teaching at Temple University. And I've learned a lot about great performance, what it takes to deliver great performance not only on stage but in the workplace, as a result of being a musician. And I don't know if there are any musicians out there in the audience, but if you are a musician, you probably recognize what these are. These are chords. If you play guitar or piano or other chordal instrument, you'll note that a chord is nothing more than a series of notes played simultaneously, and chords can either be really harmonious and sound very pleasant to the ear, or if you play the wrong notes at the same time, it sounds very discordant and very off-putting to the ear. And I had a bit of an epiphany a few years ago, and I realized that chords are really a very apt metaphor for people and how people work together in the workplace. So what I ask my clients is, what chords are you playing at work? You know, what music are you sending out at work? Are they harmonious? Are they the kind of chords that people want to listen to and be around, or are they shrill? And you probably know people at either end of the spectrum. Those that you enjoy working with, they're collaborative and cooperative and fun, and those who, when you see them coming down the hallway, you go, gee, but I'm going to head in the opposite direction. So that's a little bit about my background, and what I like to say is that right chord leadership, we help leaders, teams, and organizations achieve great performance, and I do that by offering consulting services and programs through a number of different media, and I touch on all of the different topics that you see on the screen there. So it's a little bit about me, and what I like to say is when people work in harmony, great things happen, and that's really what it's all about, people working together in harmony. When people work in harmony, amazing things happen. So let's do this. You know a little bit about me, and I'm imagining several dozen people out there in virtual land, and I'm more accustomed to working face-to-face with folks, but 21st century technology being what it is, we'll do the best we can with this virtual technology here. So the first thing I'm going to do is going to ask you a quick poll question. And in order to do that, I believe I need to turn the operation of the webinar over to Lynette for a moment, and she's going to run the poll question. So the question here is, compared to other strategic priorities, how important is increasing innovation and creative problem solving at your company? Why don't you go ahead and select one of those?
Is everyone seeing it on the screen, the poll question? Okay, I see some votes are coming in, so yes.
Okay, good.
So 58% said very important, 8% said not important at all, 8% said not very important, 15% said neutral, and then 15% said important. So I'm going to close the poll.
Okay. Yep, Lynette, and if you could make me the presenter again, that would be useful.
Okay. Bear with me a moment.
Okay, so by a wide margin, people said that it is very important, which sort of makes sense since you are on this call here. Obviously, innovation is something that is very important to you. So we'll continue here. Interesting. And here we are. So the folks that wrote this article from Harvard Business Review last December said that practically every company innovates, but few do so in an orderly, reliable way. In far too many organizations, the big breakthrough happens despite the company. Despite the company. Great ideas remain captive in the heads of employees. Innovation initiatives take way too long, and the ideas that are developed are not necessarily the best efforts or the best fit with strategic priorities. And to that I say, ain't that the truth? You know, that might resonate with you at your company, where when innovation happens, it's actually despite the company. And all too often, unfortunately, great ideas really do remain captive in people's heads, and there's no sound strategy or methodology for tapping into the innate creativity and innovation of the people that work at the organization. That's what we're going to talk about today, how leaders can better leverage the innovative tendencies that truly we all have at the workplace and that all too often are not tapped into. One of the problems, I think, about talking about innovation and, okay, no one can see your screen. That's not good. Let's see. Okay. Sorry, folks. My screen is indicating that my screen is showing. Lynette, if you could make me the presenter again, I think that might be the issue.
I'm looking for your name. I think you are. I did make you the presenter, so.
Okay.
Because your name. So I'm gonna switch me back and then put you back up and see what happens. Sorry.
Oh.
Maybe it's something that's going on with my screen only. Okay, so you can continue.
Are you seeing the screen, Lynette?
No, but don't worry about it.
Well, perhaps other folks aren't either. That's my only concern.
Can everyone see the screen? What's displayed on the screen?
Okay, folks are saying that they're not seeing it.
Yeah, I'm still seeing the poll question as well. So let me see if I.
Okay. Sorry, folks. We'll be with you in one moment.
So it says waiting to view Michael Brenner's screen. So try to share your screen. Okay, now I see it.
Okay, good. Beautiful. I knew we'd work it out.
Okay, good.
So as I was saying, one of the problems with talking about innovation is just the massive amount of content about it. Matter of fact, when I Googled the word innovation, I got, what did I get? I got about 393 million hits in less than half a second. So when you're talking about that quantity of information on that topic, it's little wonder that leaders can be a little flummoxed when it comes to, you know, thinking about and instituting sound strategies for driving innovation. So hopefully this brief webinar today will help in that respect. I think we need to first start asking, what the heck is innovation? We've been told by our bosses, or we've been told from all the things that we read, heck, we've been told by 393 million hits that innovation is important, but we don't really perhaps know exactly what it is. So this is a really short and effective definition. It comes from a guy by the name of Paul Schumann, who has written many books on innovation. And he says innovation is the way of transforming the resources of an enterprise through the creativity of people into new resources and wealth. So I think the key here to remember is innovation is taking creative ideas, novel ideas, and actually doing something with them, turning them into new services, new products, and hopefully, you know, new revenue for the company. So it's not just sitting around, you know, dreaming up creative ideas. It's actually doing something with those ideas. And I think that's a very apt definition of innovation. So if you'll indulge me, I don't like to read long slides typically, but I think this is a really good quote from the president of Mako, a guy by the name of Jose Costa. And I've highlighted some of the key phrases that I want you to remember. Because a lot of people say, Mike, why are we talking about innovation? Why is it important? I hear it's important, but I'm not really connecting the dots. And I think what he says is critical. He says we have to innovate every day, regardless of our respective industries, and make it part of our strategy. If we don't, we become obsolete and irrelevant to consumers. We've seen many brands that have failed to evolve and are no longer in business. It's a challenge that both businesses and individuals need to take more seriously to stay competitive in a global marketplace. And folks, that's what it comes down to. Why are we taking the time out of our busy days for a webinar on innovation? Because if we don't, we risk becoming obsolete and irrelevant in today's unpredictable, extremely fast-paced and chaotic marketplace. If you're not innovating, I can assure you your competitors are, and they're looking for ways to put you out of business. And failure to evolve, as we know from high school history class, is something that our friends the dinosaurs know all too well, right? So we don't want to become dinosaurs. The dinosaurs developed these enormous heads and little arms, which did not serve them particularly well over a long stretch of time, and we know what happened to them. So just to go back real briefly, Peter Drucker said it perhaps even more succinctly: the enterprise that does not innovate inevitably ages and declines, and in a period of rapid change such as the present, the decline will be fast. And that's why we talk about innovation, think about innovation, discuss innovation. So hopefully I've made a persuasive case why innovation is absolutely critical to your organization. I don't care if you're a hospital, a manufacturer, a retail company. It's about innovating, and leadership is a huge factor in the success of that innovation strategy. So let's talk a little bit about what is the role of leadership in innovation. To take a page from some very famous entrepreneurs, everyone of course knows Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs said, "Innovation distinguishes between a leader and a follower." I guess you can't get much more stark than that. If one were to ask Steve Jobs, what is the primary difference between a leader and a follower, he would say a leader innovates. So he is connecting the very definition of what it means to be a leader with this notion of innovating. And then you have Leah Bousquet, who is the founder and CEO of TaskRabbit. She says something else very interesting here. She says, "I wake up every morning and think to myself, how far can I push the company forward in the next 24 hours? So we know from Leah's quote here that when it comes to leadership and innovation, it has something to do with pushing the company forward. It has something to do with pushing the company in bold new directions and helping the company make progress. And finally, from author Stephen Johnson, this quote: "If you look at history, innovation doesn't come just from giving people incentives. It comes from creating environments where their ideas can connect." So what we take away from this quote is innovation and leadership has something to do with creating the kind of culture, the kind of environment where people can connect, where ideas can take root, and where people have the freedom to explore and experiment. So when we take Steve Jobs' quote and Leah's quote and Stephen's quote, we start to get a picture of leadership's role in fostering the innovative culture. So let's peel the onion back even a little further and take a deeper dive into what leadership can specifically do to drive innovation, which is, of course, the title of today's webinar. So, as I said, 393 million hits in less than half a second. Here are 5 innovation-boosting practices that leaders can implement immediately into the workplace. Are these the only 5? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Are these the best 5? I can't say for sure. But what I do know, in working in this field for about 15 years and working with a lot of clients around this topic of innovation, that these 5 have proven to be particularly useful and particularly powerful. And as I say, it doesn't matter what kind of organization you are, they can be implemented in a way that conforms to your norms, that conforms to your protocols, and you can have a lot of success with these 5 practices. So let's spend the next part of the webinar, now that we've sort of set a foundation for what is innovation and what is leadership's role in innovation, let's talk a little bit about these practices. And here they are. Number 1, and as I say, we'll peel back the onion on all of these. but I want to share them with you up front first. Number one is to articulate and communicate a powerful purpose. Number two is to nurture, support, and reward innovative thinking. Number three, facilitate progress on meaningful work. Essential leadership practice number four, embrace and encourage constant course correction. And number five, seek and celebrate the unexpected. Okay, so let's tackle each of these in turn. Number one, articulating and communicating a powerful purpose. Folks, over the last few years, I have transformed into Captain Purpose. My alter ego is a superhero who is dedicated to ridding the world of lame, uninspiring mission statements, visions, and values, one team, one department, one company at a time. Well, of course, I'm being only slightly facetious here, but over the last few years, I've really come to appreciate the power of having a purpose that galvanizes and motivates and inspires the workforce. And the reason why I've really looked at the power of purpose lately is because I've just seen too many uninspiring and lame missions, visions, and values. And I actually came across this cartoon I think is brilliant. Here's a company putting together a mission statement, and you know, they're literally, it's basically a Mad Lib, right? They're basically just plopping in words, cliches that they've seen elsewhere, and in a fruitless attempt to come up with a mission statement that inspires anybody to want to come and do their best work. So in the first line, they're putting in a heartfelt adjective, then a few cliches, and then, you know, perhaps a long-winded phrase, finishing up with a big aspirational word directed to some kind of vague group. And he says, you know, how about quality? She says, no, we already used that. Now, I think a lot of you can probably identify with this, and I want to make the point that I'm not saying that mission statements don't have their place. They certainly do. But when they become just kind of hackneyed phrases that exist on a plaque somewhere, then they're practically useless. So mission statements, vision statements tend to be very vague, very ambiguous, very nebulous, and even values that I've seen, although very well intentioned, and I think companies do need values, they're often take on the feel of something you've probably seen or read before. You know, customer service. We value customer service. Well, of course you do. I mean, who doesn't? The difference, I think, with purpose and why I'm Captain Purpose is that when you have uninspiring missions, values, and visions, you're left with zombies. And people walk around and they do their work because they're getting a paycheck, but they don't necessarily do it with any real sense of commitment, dedication, or passion. If, however, they are galvanized by a clear, articulate purpose, one that speaks to both their heads and their hearts, and that's the key, then there's no telling what that team or organization can accomplish together. Purpose really answers the why. You know, why do we do what we do? What on earth are we here for? And I would like to suggest to you that the answer to that question be something more than making money. I understand that companies are in business, obviously, to make a profit, but there's a lot of research that demonstrates that if that's the only reason that people come to work is to make a paycheck, they will, you know, go through the motions to make that paycheck, but they'll really do the minimum amount of work required not to get fired. And frankly, folks, I don't think that's good enough today. If you have a workforce that's just doing the minimum not to get fired, how could you hope to compete with those organizations whose workforce is truly committed, truly passionate, and truly engaged? And it really comes down to, why are we here? Why do we do what we do? What on earth are we here for? And there's a nice quote here from the CEO of a company called Gap International. And she says, when people's orientation to their job transforms from performing work to that of making a difference, they become exponentially more effective at coming together to produce extraordinary results. And to me, that is the essence of innovation, coming together to produce extraordinary results. It can't happen unless people feel that they're making a difference, making a meaningful contribution, and that that contribution matters. And that's why, for me, articulating a galvanizing purpose that answers the question, why do we do what we do, why on earth are we here, is the first step in creating a culture of innovation. Now let's hear from Pontish in this brief clip.
It's amazing what happens in an organization when there's a sense of purpose, because people are always wanting to give their heart to something, and they don't think they can do that at work. People want to make a difference, and usually that's an extracurricular activity. So when there is a large purpose, bigger than the organization's survival, people love to give all of their heart and soul to what they're doing, and get a sense of making a difference, and at the same time produce the results that are necessary for the organization to grow. And leadership has to create what really makes a difference to them. It can't be a tagline, because then it's nonsense. It has to have something that leaders themselves are really energized by and are authentically committed to. In general, I don't think people spend enough time on purpose. It doesn't even occur for most people, for most leaders. Being purposeful on the surface doesn't look like it connects to companies' goals. However, if you really think about it, it is the essence behind how the goals get accomplished. Because purpose creates people coming together for something bigger than the survival of themselves or the organization. And when you have that, you have an environment where people are giving all of themselves, their heart and soul, which then creates an enlightened organization, an agile organization. And when you have that, and the leader has that kind of connection, then anything you say happens. That's magic.
Yeah, I love that. I love that clip. She talks about connection. She talks about heart and soul. And she talks about the power of purpose to galvanize a team to produce exceptional work. And for me, that's the first step in creating a culture of innovation and driving innovation. I have some tips for you as to how you can go about thinking about that for yourself. One of the metaphors I like to use is your purpose is like a lighthouse. In the midst of all the craziness that comprises your day-to-day responsibilities at your job, and the chaos and the unpredictability, that purpose will always lead you back. That purpose will always guide you back to what really matters and what's really important. And if you can get a team to rally around a powerful purpose, they will be constantly looking for new ways to improve, new ways to deliver better products and services, new ways to serve your customers better, and that is at the heart of innovation. So some questions that I would pose to you are, what is your team's compelling purpose for existing? And again, you know, if the answer to that is to make money, yes, but I would also recommend that you dig a little deeper. How are the services your team provides benefiting the lives of your customers? For me, that interface with your customers is where the question of your purpose can best be answered, in the interface with your customers. How are you improving? How are you bettering the lives of your customers? And finally, how can you thread that purpose through the DNA of your team in a way that energizes and motivates people to continually innovate? For me, that's the $100,000 question. How can you leverage that galvanizing, inspiring, motivating purpose in a way that inspires people to want to keep pushing, to want to keep pushing, to want to keep pushing? So here's something that you can do. I said these were 5 practices that you can put into practice right now. Here's what I suggest. Start with your own team. Your organization is too big, so start small with your own team. Assemble 4 to 6 of your star performers. Identify who's coming to work engaged, who's coming to work impassioned? Who's coming to work with a sense of purpose? Talk to those people. Ask them, what do they love about their work? Now, once you get that information, again, it doesn't have to be pages and pages and pages. Just get a sense of what it is they love about their work, because that's really, really rich data. And once you have that, work with them to start whittling that list of ideas and thoughts down to what I call the double tweet. I think a tweet can have no more than 140 characters. Well, that's very, very little. So I've given you the permission to make it a double tweet, which would be 280 characters. The point is, the purpose should not be some rambling monologue. It should be concise, it should be simple, and as I said earlier, it should touch both the head and the heart. Once you have landed on a purpose and you've articulated your purpose, it is time to start getting feedback from both inside the team and outside the team. Does it resonate with your internal customers? And heck, talk to your external customers about it. They'll love to be part of that conversation. People love to talk about purpose. It's what drives them. It's what motivates them to get up and go to work every day. And once you have a purpose that seems to be resonating, keep refining it, keep testing it until it sings. And of course, by sings, I mean that it's magic. It's just people are feeling it in their hearts, and people are coming to work with that purpose at the heart of everything they do. It may sound like real esoteric stuff, but it's not. I've seen the power of when a team leader and a team focuses on articulating a purpose, the incredible work that comes out of that effort. It's really remarkable. So that's number one. Think about articulating a galvanizing purpose that people will want to rally around and start thinking automatically and instinctively about how to improve your products and services. So the second leadership practice is nurturing, supporting, and rewarding innovative thinking. Unfortunately, in too many organizations I've seen, employees are encouraged not to be creative, not to be innovative, not to color outside the lines. And to me, that's really a shame, because you have to step outside of the lines to come up with new and novel ideas. And those organizations that actually cultivate, support, nurture, and even reward innovative thinking are the ones that I see making real progress. I think there's a fear of rewarding innovative thinking, because the thinking is that, well, if I have all my people, sitting around dreaming up new processes and new things, then they're not actually doing their work. And my response to that is that is their work, or at least part of their work. There's a lot of research on companies that actually have their employees dedicate a certain amount of time each day or each week purely to brainstorm, purely to think innovatively. And the new ideas for products and services that come out of that relatively brief period of time are incredible. So, the research will speak for itself. I'll give you an example. In one of the workshops that I do on creativity and innovation, I show this picture of a wheelbarrow, and I ask people to write down as many observations of this wheelbarrow as they can in about 2 to 3 minutes. And then I ask them to look at their list, and anything that they've written down that tends to be a positive, I ask them to put a plus next to. Any statement that's sort of neutral, neither here nor there, I ask them to put a little check mark. And anything that they've written down as they've been observing and describing this wheelbarrow that's negative, I ask them to put a little minus sign. And then I ask them to raise their hand if most of the things they've written down are pluses, and very, very few, if any, people raise their hand. And then I ask them to raise their hand if most of what they've written down have a negative connotation, and practically all the hands go up. At that point, I start asking for examples. I say, well, what are some of the negative things you wrote down? And I hear the same things every time. Handle's too short. The wheelbarrow is going to fall over. It's poorly designed. It looks useless. It looks like it's been manufactured poorly, and on and on and on. Negative, negative, negative. Then I finally ask the audience, I say, who remembers what I asked for? I asked for observations, and what you gave me were descriptions. Observations and descriptions are very different. What they gave are negative descriptions. They immediately looked to see what was wrong with the wheelbarrow based upon the paradigms that they've had of dealing with previous wheelbarrows. And of course, this wheelbarrow does not subscribe to conventional wheelbarrows. So right away, the thinking is that this wheelbarrow is somehow flawed. But I did not ask for descriptions, I asked for observations. So what I really wanted was, this wheelbarrow is black. This wheelbarrow is two-dimensional. This wheelbarrow appears to have one wheel. Those are observations. What I got instead were criticisms, judgments, and negative evaluations. I then share, and I share with them, well, you know, there's another group of people that I showed this wheelbarrow to, and they had very, very different answers. They said things like, that's a very interesting wheelbarrow because the handle is so short, if you got some mud on the wheel, you could reach right over and kick it off. And I say another one of these people said, hey, that's a neat wheelbarrow. You could wheel that right up to the edge and empty it over the edge. And somebody else said, yeah, you could put a little trap door in the bottom and empty it by just pulling on a string. And then the $100,000 question is, who do you think made up that audience? And inevitably, somebody in the crowd says, children. And I go, yep, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Children, yep, we're getting some bleed through. Getting some bleed through, folks. Let's make sure everybody's muted. Thank you. So children, if you have children, you know that they do not necessarily look for what's wrong with something, like adults unfortunately have been conditioned to do. They look for the possibilities, right? If you've ever gotten your child a present, a lot of times the toy sort of stagnates in the corner and they play with the box because the box offers potentially more possibility for fun. It can be a fort, it can be a tank, it can be a castle. Okay, so what I say is, along the lines of something that Picasso famously said, every child is an artist. The problem is how to remain an artist once we grow up. And indeed, the very thing that suppresses our innate creative instinct as children is school, right? Because in school, we've been conditioned to look for the one right answer to the problem. And that one right answer is typically in the back of the teacher's edition, okay? When it comes to driving innovation, it sounds funny, but we need to think more like children. We need to stop looking at novel ideas and new ideas that we're not familiar with and pointing out what's wrong with them. And what we should do is adopt more of a childlike mentality and look for the possibility, look for the opportunity. I always tell my clients, rather than look for what's wrong with an idea, look for what's potentially right about it. One of the things we can start doing immediately is being aware of the killer phrases we use. If somebody mentions a new idea or they had a new thought for how to do something new, inevitably they're hit with what I call the killer phrase, something like, it's not in the budget, I'll never go for it. Or one of my favorites, let's get a committee to look into it. Whenever you hear let's get a committee to look into it, you can be pretty sure that that idea is dead in the water. Or we don't have the time to pursue that. Or I could see trying that if times were different, and on and on and on. Think to yourself, how many killer phrases have you heard in your career? The problem with killer phrases is they kill ideas at the root without giving them an opportunity to blossom, or at the very least to be explored. So my suggestion is, be careful of the killer phrases that you use, and when you hear killer phrases on your team, gently point it out and start to become the kind of leader and start to encourage your own leaders to adopt a more exploratory, childlike perspective when it comes to new ideas, exploring the potential and possibility of ideas rather than killing them with so-called killer phrases. Something else I'd like to impress upon you is to do away with several innovation myths that typically suppress innovation in organizations. Myth number one is it's the solitary genius who is responsible for most innovation. That is not true. We can think of, you know, our culture is full of so-called solitary geniuses, and we go, well, I'm not Mozart, I'm not Einstein, how can I innovate? Well, you can innovate. Everybody has the potential to be innovative. There was an article I saw on the web from fastcodesign.com, And they said something very interesting. They said there's a quiet revolution happening in corporate America. Big companies are applying startup strategies and tools to jumpstart innovation. Isn't that awesome, right? It's not about pontificating on the innovation process. It's about being lean, focused, and maniacally strategic. Okay? Here are some examples. Intuit. They organize multi-day lean start-ins that gather so-called entrepreneurs from across the company to teach them how to apply rapid experimentation or rapid experimentation methodologies to create new products, services, and business models. Or Kimberly-Clark, promoting one-day expert acceleration sessions that bring hand-picked thought leaders together to talk about business strategies and to bust mental models that are holding back their thinking. Or Whirlpool, using a network of so-called innovation mentors who come in and help the business teams focus on challenging market orthodoxies. Do you see the theme here? It's all about challenging the conventional, challenging the way things have always been done. And in my experience, that's the one thing that holds teams and organizations back the most, the way we've always done it. I urge everyone on this webinar to get outside of that mode of thinking, adopt Picasso's philosophy. How do we get back to that childlike innocence and start thinking new and novel ideas differently? Myth number 2, the techies are the only innovators. Not true. There's a lot of innovation happening in technology, but everybody from sales to marketing to merchandising to you name it has the power to innovate. It's not just the purview of the tech folks. Number 3, if it isn't new to the world, it's not innovation. Not true at all. There's innovation that reflects what is kind of comically referred to here as good theft and bad theft, right? Good theft is borrowing ideas, being inspired by ideas, honoring those ideas, crediting those ideas, taking those ideas, and transforming them using your own voice, your own experience, your own biography. And I love the last one there, remix. If you have kids that are into music, like I am, they're taking music and they're combining it in new and novel ways and calling them remixes, and it's like the hottest thing now in the clubs, right? Of course, there's bad inspiration, there's bad theft, and that's when you plagiarize or you imitate without giving credit, or you rip someone off. That's not the kind of idea borrowing I'm talking about. But there's nothing wrong with taking an existing idea and building on it. I mean, that is the history of innovation, is taking ideas, tweaking them, modifying them, and improving them. So there's nothing wrong with that. Okay? So number 4, myth number 4, innovation will distract us from what's really important. Okay? What I'd like to impress upon you is that the daily work that you all need to do, as part of your job responsibilities, that's not going anywhere. That is an integral part of what you need to do as part of your job position. But innovation should be just as critical. Working in opportunities to think, to brainstorm, to connect is not distracting you from what's really important. It is what's really important, or at least as important as anything else you might be doing in the course of your day. And finally, myth number 5, innovation equals chaos. Not true. If you think about a jazz solo, and as a jazz saxophonist, I play jazz solos all the time. What's interesting about a jazz solo, people think, oh, you can just play anything you want. Not true. A jazz solo allows for maximum freedom and maximum creativity within certain constraints and certain confines. In musical language, those constraints are chords, right, or the structure or form of the song. You can't just play anything you want. Then it sounds bad. Actually, there's a type of jazz called free jazz where you do play practically anything you want as it comes to you. And very few people enjoy listening to free jazz because it's just hard to listen to. But like a well-crafted jazz solo, your efforts at your organization can allow for maximum freedom, maximum creativity within certain protocols and within certain guidelines and rules. That's for you to decide what makes sense for your team. But innovation does not equal free-for-all chaos. As a matter of fact, the most innovative ideas came out of structured freedom. That's the best metaphor that I can use for this example. So let's talk a little bit about essential leadership practice number 3, facilitating progress on meaningful work. A few years ago, the director of research at Harvard Business School, a woman by the name of Dr. Teresa Amabile, someone I had the privilege of working with, did a really cool research study. And she wanted to look at what really drives engagement and performance in the workplace. And she did a really fascinating research study that she later wrote about in this book called The Progress Principle. And I'm not going to get into her research methodology because we don't have time, but she elicited or solicited about 12,000 daily diary entries from the participants in this research study. And she asked them every day for many months, the duration of the study, what happened on that particular day that either made you feel good about work or made you feel lousy about work. And she started connecting the dots and putting the puzzles together, and she discovered that she had a window into people's so-called inner work life. And without getting too in-depth here, inner work life is really the combination of perceptions, emotions, and motivations that we experience all day, every day at work. It's the sense-making that we make about things that happen to us. It's our emotional reactions to them. And then it's the motivation that results, whether to be engaged and passionate about our work or to be disengaged and, hop on monster.com at the end of the day. So inner work life is something that we all experience, and it's not really visible. You can't touch inner work life, but you can certainly see the outcomes through people's behavior. Okay. Now, what they found was that when people were having positive inner work life, perceptions of their work were positive, the emotions they felt every day were pleasant, they enjoyed the people they worked with, they enjoyed their bosses, they felt appreciated and valued, they were intrinsically motivated, they felt that they were contributing in a meaningful way. Here's the interesting part. The researchers saw a cause and effect dynamic on 4 dimensions of performance. And look at that top one there, creativity. Creativity is at the heart of innovation. Not only were people more productive, more committed, more collaborative and collegial, their ideas were more creative, and they had more of them. Now that sort of makes sense, and you probably know that yourself. When you're feeling good about work, you're feeling like you're making a difference, you're feeling like you're working with people you enjoy, your ideas are naturally more creative, more interesting, okay? Here's the kicker though. What drives inner work life? If inner work life drives performance, what drives inner work life? Right? What elevates employees' inner work life? And what the research showed was that the #1 driver of inner work life was when people reported making progress on meaningful work. In other words, when people reported making progress on work that was meaningful to them, it was far and away the most powerful driver of performance and engagement in the workplace. More than money, more than, being respected, although all that stuff is important, but nothing came close to how people felt when they made progress in meaningful work. And that's how they got the name of the book, The Progress Principle. Now, what's interesting is progress came in different forms. You had those occasional breakthroughs, but those were pretty rare. More frequently, you had just a little forward movement, or what they call a small win. When participants in the study experienced a small win, they had a huge increase in their inner work life. And so I'll just skip over this. Here's something I want you to take away. This is something you could start implementing right away. The researchers' results revealed unawareness of the power of progress across all levels of management. Any manager's job description should start with facilitating subordinates' progress every day. Even if this imperative isn't big news for you, many managers are clearly unaware of it. I suggest that if you want to drive innovation in your team, in your organization, you start facilitating progress to the best of your abilities for your people. And the way you do that is by, to the best of your ability, leveraging your authority as a leader or as a manager to helping people get their work done. That might mean giving them the resources they need. That might mean giving them the support they need. That might mean giving them the encouragement they need. Everyone's working on a tight budget. Sometimes the resources you need to do your job aren't readily available. You can make up for that by encouraging, supporting, and being present on your team. Let me give you some examples here. Well, first, a little quote from Peter Drucker. So much of what we call management consists in making it difficult for people to work, right? So a lot of what people reported on the research was they want to come to work and do a good job, but there's just so many obstacles and so many hindrances, they get frustrated, they disengage, they check out, and say goodbye to your innovation, okay? One of the things that you can start doing, leveraging small wins. These are seemingly minor progress events that yield significant inner work-life benefits, sometimes as large as much greater leaps forward. The takeaway here, start acknowledging the small wins that your team experiences every day. Those breakthroughs are nice. Those big triumphant aha moments are great. But small wins are just as powerful, and they'll drive progress and they'll drive inner work life, and people will continue to find innovative ways to do their work. Now, on the downside, even seemingly minor setbacks can really set inner work life back. In matter of fact, the power of setbacks to diminish happiness is more than twice as strong as the power of progress to boost happiness. So those little setbacks that people experience every day, they have a huge psychological effect on people, and sometimes we don't even realize it. Okay, so taking a page from Benjamin Zander, a famous, he's the conductor of the Boston Symphony Orchestra, and he does a lot of work around innovation and creativity in his workshops, and he says something I really like. When his students make a mistake, rather than judging them, critiquing them, humiliating them, berating them, he says, how fascinating, and he's really funny, you can look him up on YouTube when they make a mistake. He says, how fascinating, and I love that philosophy, and I love that attitude. I'm not suggesting that you encourage your people to go out there and make mistakes, nor am I suggesting that you celebrate truly egregious mistakes. What I'm suggesting is you allow people the opportunity to fail, to explore, to experiment, to try new things. And if an idea doesn't come to fruition, adopt that how fascinating attitude, because it'll show you potentially a new direction, a new approach. Heck, it'll show you something that didn't work so that you can now try to move in a different direction. Can you see how helping people make progress and adopting this how fascinating attitude and philosophy is so different than what we normally experience in organizations, where failure is, has significant consequences, where people feel criticized and humiliated for coloring outside the lines, and where bureaucracy just kills innovative thinking dead. We really, really want to get away from that, okay? So in the interest of time, I'm just going to move to the fourth essential leadership practice, embracing and encouraging constant course correction, okay? This is something that people are very uncomfortable with, acknowledging that, you know what, sometimes a particular course of action needs to be rethought. You need to recalibrate. But if you learn about any of the truly great innovators in history or the great organizational leaders who embrace what I'm telling you today, they're all about constant course correction. There's a funny joke that that says that a ship was radioing another ship and said, please divert your course 15 degrees to the north to avoid a collision. And the other ship responded, well, recommend that you divert your course 15 degrees to the south to avoid a collision. And the first boat comes back and says, this is the captain of a U.S. Navy ship. I say again, divert your course. And the response comes back, no, I say again, you'd better divert your course. So finally, the first ship's captain is exasperated. He says, this is the aircraft carrier Abraham Lincoln, the second largest ship in the United States. I demand that you change your course 15 degrees north. That's 5 degrees north, or countermeasures will be undertaken to ensure the safety of this ship. And the response is, well, this is a lighthouse, your call, okay? So it wasn't a ship at all, it was actually a lighthouse, okay? So whether that story really happened or not is irrelevant. The point is, sometimes we need to recalibrate. We need to step back, we need to rethink an approach that, heck, we thought was going to be terrific, and it just hasn't turned out to be so. So remember the ship and the lighthouse, okay? Let's take a quick look here at a little video clip here from John Covey, who talks a little bit about constant course correction and why it's imperative to driving innovation.
So how do we get from where we're at to where we want to go? You know, the analogy is given of a plane taking off from Los Angeles heading to New York. Well, once it gets into the air, it immediately it's off of its course, its perfect flight path. It has a perfect path that is constantly making adjustments and corrections. So as it travels, it actually gets to its final destination. I found that true with myself in sales. As a leader, you're walking into a meeting, you're working with an individual. You've got a perfect flight path. Does the meeting always go down the perfect flight path? Does the meeting with the customer always go down the perfect flight path? It doesn't. So constant small corrections to keep us on the path to make sure that we do land where we want to land is what we need. I find those things, those corrections can happen in a couple of ways. One, as I walk out of meetings, I say to myself, how did that go? What went well? What could I have improved? Where do I need to change? And another important aspect of that is getting some instrumentation feedback from those around you. Other people in the meeting, salespeople, based on the kind of meeting it is, getting their feedback, helping you make those small adjustments to help you get to that final destination.
Okay. So just like the power of small wins that I mentioned a few minutes ago and leveraging the psychological uplift that small wins afford, it encourages people to keep thinking creatively, so too with course correction. Leaving a meeting, leaving a client interaction, thinking about a process, what could we do better? It really needs to become part of the DNA of the team, which is not easy. But once it does, it's remarkable the results that you can experience. So looking, what went well, what could we have done better, and don't just come up with it yourself. Ask your team. Teammates are hungry to give that kind of feedback to their leaders, and unfortunately, all too often leaders they're not accessible. They can't be found, or they just don't think to allow their people to have a voice in that conversation. So what I would suggest to you is identify one area in your department that would benefit from a course correction. You might phrase it in the form of how might we? How might we do that process quicker? How might we deliver a better quality product? How might we run our meetings more efficiently? It doesn't matter. But what I find is how might we is the magic phrase of innovation. It leads to incredible insight. And then if you're so inclined, here's a little exercise called feed forward. You get a partner or a group of people together and you bounce, what I call bounce, what you want to improve upon each other. So it kind of conjures up the idea of a ball bouncing. It's like, boop, you just kind of bounce the ball. Hey, how might we XYZ, folks? And then you ask the people to give you a blink idea. The blink idea comes from a book by Malcolm Gladwell called Blink. A blink idea is just a fast, intuitive, off-the-cuff idea. It's not a long, drawn-out litany of suggestions. It's boom, real quick, real fast. It's one or two suggestions, maybe 15 to 30 seconds. You capture that feedback, and then you switch roles. And in a matter of very few minutes, I assure you that you will come up with possibly dozens of innovative ideas for tackling whatever it was that you said you wanted to improve upon. This feed-forward idea I've done with thousands of clients, and it's incredibly powerful. Hints at the bottom, focus on the future. Don't worry about the past went wrong, what went wrong in the past, because you can't change the past. Focus on ideas for the future. Be quick. Get around to as many people as possible. Don't get hung up on, well, that will never work, or we can't do that. Get rid of those killer phrases. And finally, respond with thank you. This is not a time or place to critique ideas. There'll be time for that later. Feed forward is all about quantity. It's all about rapid innovation and rapid iteration, and it's extremely powerful. The fifth and final leadership practice that you can put into practice immediately is seeking and celebrating the unexpected. One of the exercises I do in my innovation workshop is the hot dog dilemma, and feel free to steal this. It's great. I once read an article that the #1 cause of choking hazards for children is a hot dog because it's the perfect shape to plug up a child's airway. And in this article, a physician is quoted as saying, if someone could design a new kind of hot dog that eliminates the choking hazard, it would be terrific. And so what I do is I ask my audience, my participants, to do just that. I ask them to recreate, rethink, reimagine a hot dog in such a way that it eliminates the choking hazard. And let me tell you, I've seen some hilarious but also ingenious designs. They have rethought the texture. They've rethought the shape. They've rethought the color. They've rethought you name it, they've rethought it. And then I ask them, in what ways did you reframe the reality of hot dogs to solve this problem? And in other words, how did you have to come at the very notion of a hot dog differently? How did you have to look at a hot dog through different lenses to solve this problem? And it's a terrific exercise with the broader lesson of sometimes you have to look at the unfamiliar in new and novel ways. And that's something that you can start encouraging your team to do every day. It's so easy to fall into a rut, to fall into a rote, habitual way of doing things. And this hot dog exercise is a great example of what can happen when we put on different lenses and view the familiar through different lenses. Here are some ideas. Think in opposites. What would we never do? What would we never do? It sounds absurd, but if you're in a staff meeting and you're stuck, say, hey folks, what would we never do? Well, we'd never hang up on a customer. We'd never tell a customer we didn't want their business. Sometimes by coming at it through a lens of opposition, you will land on ideas that you would have never thought of if you were thinking about the problem in more conventional terms. Here's another one. Ask, what would we do if resources weren't an issue? We get so hung up, we don't have enough time, we don't have enough money, we don't have enough this, we don't have enough that. Take that off the table. Challenge your team to think about the issue as if resources were not an issue. You'll come up with some amazing ideas, and then you can start assessing the feasibility of the ideas. But first, get rid of that resource, 800-pound gorilla in the room. That will stifle your innovative thinking if you're worried about resources. And finally, think in metaphors. What is the problem challenge like? How is this problem like a chessboard? How is this problem like a submarine? How is this issue we're facing like, like a game of football? It doesn't matter. Thinking in metaphors automatically changes the way you're thinking about the problem. It forces you into a different level of thinking from which can come new insights, new ideas, and new framing of the problem. So I would say think in metaphors, ask what would we do if resources weren't an issue, and think in opposites. Those are ideas that you can start implementing right away in your staff meetings. Try one new thing every week. I've thrown a lot at you here today, but my suggestion is just try one. Try it on for size. And you know what? If it doesn't, if it doesn't fit your culture or if it doesn't fit your leadership style, try something else. But remember that progress. People reported feeling most valuable, most appreciated, and did their best work when they were making progress. That's the key. Try one new thing every week that puts you on that path to progress. Finally, it really does start with you. The leader of the team, the manager of the team sets the tone. If innovation is not part of your DNA, if it's something that you have framed up as something that is a distraction from the, quote, real work, there's no way that you'll be able to galvanize a team. There's no way that you'll be able to create a culture of innovation. They're looking to you for cues, and if innovation and the permission to explore and be creative and innovate is explicit from you and expected of your people, there's no telling what will happen, but it really does start with you first. Just like putting on the mask in the airplane starts with putting it on yourself first. Same kind of deal. Finally, a lesson from the great Bruce Lee. Knowing is not enough. You must apply. Willing is not enough. You must do. It's great to think about all this stuff and say you went to this webinar, and I'm incredibly appreciative that you have come to this webinar. I encourage you to do something, take action, do one thing differently. From a small action can come huge results. And heck, if we can get millions of people to look at cats playing the piano on the internet, surely we can get people fired up and inspired about innovation. So in conclusion, and I know I've gone over here by a few minutes, I appreciate those of you who are still hanging on. Wow, can you tell I'm passionate about this stuff? Can you tell I believe in this stuff? I know that you do too, otherwise you wouldn't have been on this phone call. And to that I say, you all rock. We need more people like you who take time out of their busy days to learn about what it takes to drive innovation, because people like you are what is going to help our organizations and our companies get to the next level and not only survive but thrive in this crazy 21st century marketplace. So keep up the good work. If you have any questions, I encourage you to reach out to me. This is an area that obviously I want to serve as a resource for you. I have a lot of experience and a lot of resources that I'd be more than happy to share with you. Let's talk. My email address is michael@rightchordleadership.com. If you have any questions or concerns or want clarification about anything, that's the email. You can feel free to call me. That's the direct line. Check out my website, rightchordleadership.com, and if you do that, I do have a blog which I write once or twice a week. I try to keep it relevant and appropriate, fun, and have it focus on the challenges that folks like you are facing every day. And if you sign up, I'll be happy to give you something I created called the Progress Playbook. And the Progress Playbook is a great tool for helping you drive engagement and performance on your team. I just give it away absolutely free. I will not spam you, and you can drop off the list anytime you want. So thank you again. Thank you, Lynette, for facilitating and hosting this webinar. It was a real treat, and go out there and innovate and do great things. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you. Thank you, Mike. We have limited time for questions. If anyone has a question, now would be the time to ask. You could either type the question in the chat box or say it aloud. So we have about maybe 5 more minutes for questions. So it doesn't seem like anyone has a question. So I will ask one.
I've either bored them to tears or I've...
you've answered. You've done so well. You've done so well.
Them so much information, they're completely stymied.
So one of my questions is when an employee has an innovative idea that he or she believes would help the company, but they're under leaders and decision makers of the company who don't embrace innovation. So what suggestions could you offer on how to get buy-in from leaders to embrace new and different things that could help the company?
Yeah, that's an awesome question, and a lot of folks are frustrated by that very thing, where they want to make change, they see opportunities for improvement, but they just have a leader who's kind of stuck in that that status quo killer phrase mentality that I talked about earlier. What needs to happen there is to frame or position the case that you want to make in such a way that it resonates with that leader. And forgive me if this sounds like an advertisement. I don't intend it to, but in my programs on influence and persuasion and communication, there are techniques and strategies which help people relay or convey an idea to the decision maker in such a way that it is inviting and resonates with that leader. If you have a leader who is only bottom line focused, is not very creative, is not very innovative, you'll need to frame your creative idea in such a way that it resonates with their temperament, right? But it is possible. Maybe you have to frame that idea in a dollars and cents way, in a way that person can see the cost savings associated with that idea. So I guess my point is to learn to frame and position your ideas in a way that will connect and resonate with the decision maker's temperament. That is a skill, that is an art, and it's not easy, but it can be done. If you go to a person like that, what do you call that, a bean counter. I hate to use kind of a disparaging word like that, but someone who's all about the numbers. And you're like, hey, I have this really creative idea. It's really wild, and it's you know, they're not gonna, it's not gonna connect with them. They're just not that kind of person.
Well,
so
that makes sense.
that's what I would say. And there's a ton of information on the internet about how to do that, how to frame your case, your argument in a way that connects with the person you're trying to convince.
So we have time for one more question that's coming from Brian Clevenger. He's asked, what can HR do to better drive innovation?
That's a great question. I think, and I love HR folks, and I have a lot of colleagues and friends in HR. I think that, and they're smart, passionate, committed people. Sometimes my experience is that they are tethered to an antiquated notion of HR. Traditionally, I think HR has been the gatekeeper. They've been the department in the organization that is responsible for sort of maintaining the status quo, for keeping things just so, for maintaining law and order, right? Because they deal with HR policy, and they deal with employee manuals, and they deal with compensation structures, and all of that stuff is incredibly important. And I'm not suggesting it's not. What I'd like to see happen is that HR transform itself into the innovation engine of the organization, because who better to do that than HR? HR is at the heart of the organization because they're closest to the people that work there, right? So HR, I think, has one of the greatest opportunities in the organization because they are the voice and the heart of the employees to start representing, embodying this notion of or this philosophy of continual innovation. They're the ones that I think need to walk the talk. So they should continually be looking for ways to be more effective, to be more efficient, to provide better quality services to their customers, to make the HR process more, easier or simpler, or whatever it happens to be. HR should be the place where people turn and go, wow, our HR department is just kicking butt. They're just reimagining everything they do. They're at the vanguard of innovation in this company. If I came across an HR organization that could be described in those terms, I think that would be fabulous. So just to wrap up, I'd say to the extent that HR starts walking the talk, and just in small pockets, maybe a small team, maybe not the whole HR department. Start small. Start with those small wins, and those small wins will lead to bigger and bigger wins. And pretty soon, people will be looking to the HR department and going, we have one of the most responsive, innovative, out-of-the-box thinking HR department you'll ever want to meet. And to me, that's awesome. That's awesome.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, and thank you all for joining us today for the Leadership Strategies for Driving Innovation webinar sponsored by LaSalle University's Human Capital Development Program. Remember to visit our website at www.lasalle.edu/human capital to learn more about the program and to register for our upcoming webinars. Today's activity ID number for the recertification credit hours is 246644. Again, a recertification of completion will be emailed to your registration email address. Thank you again for joining us. Thank you, Mike, as well, for a dynamic presentation. And this concludes today's webinar. A recorded link will be uploaded on our website. Thank you again, and do enjoy your day.